Steve, I mean, as a record promo guy, you've taken bands all over the place. Have you ever had any nasty moments? Any moments where you were in fear of losing your job? Have you ever lost a band anywhere?
I've lost a band. Well, I've not lost a band. There was an instance where Pink Floyd had a new album coming out. I think it was a momentary lapse of reason. And EMI said, we need to get some people out to Canada to see the start of the tour, because it's like a big tour. It's a big album. We've done our bit in the UK. We've done really well, but we needed more impetus for more things for them to get done. Floyd, that is. So myself, I'll name names now because it doesn't really matter. Johnny Walker, Nick Carpenter, and the great late Eddie Puma. We got on a plane and went to Montreal to see Floyd and do interviews, like major interviews, like an hour specials on for Capital and for Radio 1. And we got to the hotel on the Sunday and we're just pottering about. Nicky and Eddie said they're going to go off to the venue and just do a little record. It was early afternoon. And Johnny and I said, okay, we're going to stay and have a few beers now and we'll catch up with you. So got to about 5 o'clock. Johnny and I said, we better go. Went off to the stadium. It was a big, huge hockey stadium. Walked in the door and went to hear Dave Gilmour say, thank you, good night. And so we went backstage thinking, what the fuck are we going to say? And we said, they said, what do you think of the gig then? And Walker and his wife said, yep, that was good. I'm really looking forward to see the show tomorrow night. We said, you're a pair of lying arseholes because we've seen you come through the stage door as we finished. So they had people everywhere. So we were caught out badly. But they forgave us. And we got on the plane the next day to Toronto on their private jet. So, yeah. No,
I love that. All the way to Canada and you missed the show. Tony, have you ever missed a show?
Oh, no, generally I'm pretty good. And certainly with the Poodles, again, it was one of those marquee gigs that I remember. And Fab Poos were booked in, and I had kind of an extremely bad flu or cold, extremely bad cold or flu. And I felt absolutely terrible, and I'd been sick all afternoon. But in those days, you kind of didn't pull out because you knew it would put a lot of pressure on the promoter and everything else. So I thought, maybe I can get through this. And I just arranged to have a plastic bucket at the side of the stage, and I would just turn around while somebody else was singing a song or whatever, and I would throw up into it and then go back and finish the song. That happened on American tours as well. You just didn't cancel,
What a true
except
the show must go on.
Stone.
Wow. Dennis, what about you? Any moments where you were in fear of losing your job because everything was going pear-shaped?
Well, there were quite a few, but most of them were generally not the band's fault. It was generally problems I had with the management at Polydor because they didn't particularly like punk music. I mean, when it came, everybody was really, they didn't want it, they didn't like it. And they were forever on my back. With Siouxsie in particular, when Hong Kong Garden came out, we wanted to do a gatefold sleeve. I think it was 5,000 or 10,000 copies, which I didn't think anything of it. And suddenly I get a phone call. You've got to go upstairs on the naughty chair. And I remember going up to see the old man thinking, well, what's going on? And when I entered the office, there was the board of directors. I sat there and thought, this is good. And they said, we don't want to do this. And I said, well, why not? It's just a PR stunt. He said, well, it's expensive. I said, well, it doesn't matter. It's just good. We've just signed the band. They've got this hot single. If this was Virgin or Beggar's Banquet or Stiff, wouldn't be a problem. And I said, anyway, it's going to sell 125,000 copies anyway. So let's just do it. And it went on. And I wouldn't back down. And finally, they said, okay, you can do it. And as I got up and walked out, the director of finance just mumbled, you better have got that right. And it went on to sell 350,000 copies. So,
thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, in a way. I mean, I can't. I mean, a lot of the stories I find amusing is before I did the punk stuff and the rock stuff, I was Polydor's Jazz A&R manager. So I worked with 73 to 78, and I worked with people like Norman Granz he had his own label, and Ella Fitzgerald, Oscar Peterson, Joe Pass, Milt Jackson, Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, I used to live down Ronnie Scott's. It was, great fun. Joe Pass particularly was not a pain. He was a lovely guy. He was a good friend of mine at the time, but you never knew what he was going to do. And Oscar Peterson told me a great story. They were playing duets in Holland at one of the big, I think it was the Concert Gebouw. It holds about 3,500 people. And he said, I was playing, and suddenly there's no guitar. So he said, I carried on. I played another number, still no guitar. And he said, I got to the third number, and suddenly the guitar comes in. So he said, after we finished playing, they get up and bow to the audience. And he said, I thought maybe he had a heart attack or he was ill or something. And he said, are you okay? And Joe said, yeah. He said, I had to take a piss in the middle of the concert. And seriously, in the middle of the concert.
He did. I did hear that Joe Pass had a serious heroin problem. So
In the 50s, yes, Tony. He made one record, one album in the 50s, which was a dreadful accordion album. I can't remember the name of the American artist, but he was in and out of. He got caught in Las Vegas, and he got jailed. He was in jail for quite a time because he told me about that period, because he became a trustee and he put the band together for the prison, and he told me all the names. And I'll tell you something: if you had to book these guys, you'd pay a fortune for them. But there they were, all in jail, busted for drugs.
Probably had Art Pepper on alto.
Well, it was all because he was from Los Angeles, so it was all the LA guys. Claire Fisher was one I remember. I can't. He did tell me. I think they did an album. They actually did record an album, and then he went to Synanon, which was like it was a bit of a cult hospital thing, and which got him off the drugs. But unfortunately, he got off the drugs, and he was quite a heavy drinker. I mean, he and Zoot Sims taught me to drink. I did an apprenticeship, 5-year apprenticeship.
That you got the title of your autobiography there.
I've actually
Zoot Sims taught me how to drink.
But I mean, no, the jazz days were fun, were great times because nobody at Polydor knew anything about jazz. My boss, he said to me, "You're on your own." He said, "I don't know Barry Harris from Harry Barrett." He said. And that was it. So I could do what I liked. I mean, I did the PR. I did all the press for it because no one was interested. I mean, I remember getting Joe on Parkinson. I phoned Parky up because I'd done the show with Oscar, and I think Ella. I can't remember. And Joe was over doing an all-sea jazz festival. So I went down to see our guys. And I said, "Can you give Parky a ring and tell him Joe's over?" And I can't remember. It was a month or whatever. And they said, "No, he's booked up." And I thought, well, he's not booked up because he never booked up that far ahead, just in case someone flew in. And he would bump someone up. So I just phoned the office. I phoned his PA out and said, "Look, Joe's here on these dates. Would he be interested in having him on the show?" And he said, "Yeah." And he got on the show. And in fact, it's funny because I went to the rehearsal and I nearly caused a strike at the BBC. We were sitting in the audience while they were fiddling about. And I noticed that Joe's amp was on the wrong side. So I walked down, picked the amp up, moved it to the other side of the chair. Didn't think anything of it. This guy come across and he said, "What do you do that for?" I said, "Well, he likes it on." He said, "You can't do that." He said, "We've got stagehands to do that." And he went bananas. And I'm sitting there with Joe thinking, well, I didn't know what to say. And the floor manager came across. He said, "Look, you can't do anything because we've got men to move the flowers, one man to do the piano. You have to ask them and then he will move it." I couldn't believe it. All I did was I moved it from one side of the chair to the other.
Yes,
But I have to say, you never really knew what he was going to do. He did one thing, which has just come to mind. It's a funny story. I was down Ronnie's watching it, and Martin, the maitre d', came up and said, Oscar and Norman Grants are in town. They're in. I'm going to sit them with you. I said, okay, fine. And Oscar sits next to me, Norman's there, and Joe's playing away. And then he decided to announce. And he said, you know, Oscar Peterson, the greatest jazz pianist in the world, blah, 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 round of applause. And then he introduces me. Well, I'm sitting there. And for 10 seconds, I thought, yes. And then suddenly I realised everybody's looking at me in the club. Who the sodding hell is that? And I started to shrink. And then he got to Norman, and I started to worry a bit because I thought, well, I wonder what he's going to say. And he rambled on, and he sort of said, Norman Grants, he's done this. And finally, he got to the intro and said, would you welcome the best booker in the world, Norman Grants? And then played the best things in life for free. Well, Oscar had got hold of my knee, and he was squeezing it because we wanted to laugh, but we couldn't because Norman was sitting there stony face. And as soon as Norman left, we burst out laughing. And I got hold of Joe and I said, what did you say that for? He said, oh, it's just the first thing that came in my head. I said, then why did you play that number? He said, I thought it was a good tune. Come on, let's get a drink. He just told one of the greatest jazz producers, introduced him as the greatest booker in the world.
With the blues being a very necessary component of jazz, here then is Charlie Christian's selection, Benny's Bugle.